Well, my mother was born on the 4th of July. She turned, I won't tell you how old. She wouldn't want me to. But she had a birthday, and I'm excited to see her. She's coming in a week. And the 4th of July has always been a very happy experience in my house. Lots of fireworks, lots of celebrating Mom. But obviously, if I'm honest with you this morning, 4th of July was joyful. I was in the mountains with my family, and it was great, but heavy-hearted. Texas is on my mind. It's been a brutal thing to read the news this week. Camp Mystic is in central Texas. I grew up about 2 hours from there. Jen's family is about maybe 45 minutes from there. And Camp Mystic is a place that unifies Austin, San Antonio, Dallas, Houston, and all the small towns in between. A sacred Christian camp that's been doing wonderful ministry for a very long time. I've got a college friend that lost his daughter and is one of the ones I still haven't recovered. Can we just pray for these families? One of the things we do as a church, the scriptures say, mourn with those who mourn. And even though we're not in Texas, obviously I know you've been watching the news, you know that it was hard to write a sermon even this week, just thinking about the reality of some of my friends and what they were waking up to. And so let's mourn with Camp Mystic for a moment. Let's just say a prayer, because the only thing that can get you through this, people that have endured great tragedies like this would say, I don't know how I got through it. I just know people were praying and I experienced the prayer. So this is a powerful thing. Let's intercede for those that are affected by what's going on down there. Father in heaven, we just lift up Kerrville, Ingram, Texas, Camp Mystic, all of the people, not just Camp Mystic. There are others that have lost their lives, families that are struggling, grieving, mourning. What a challenging week it's been down there. And we from Colorado just lift up our eyes to you and say, God, please send your comfort, your peace, your mercy. Holy Spirit, move among these families that have experienced something so very devastating. Lord Jesus, just be the Prince of Peace right now for all of those who are grieving. And may your hand be upon these families as they walk this incredible journey of grief. May Jesus be glorified somehow in it. Amen. Well, I want to turn your attention now to a character that some of you will quickly remember. Miranda Priestley. You remember her? The Devil Wears Prada, one of Meryl Streep's great roles. I have seen the movie, and I was trying to follow what was going on here. She is a female in the fashion industry, and she is full of contempt, right, for her little protege, Andy. Very condescending. But she, if you can look at her one of two ways. She is either really prideful and arrogant and rude and belittling and condescending, but she is a woman in the fashion industry that has had to do whatever it takes in order to achieve her position, and she's determined to keep it. But she is the antagonist of the Devil Wears Prada film, and her little protege, who's an aspiring person trying to get into the fashion industry, kind of gets caught up in it, right? And you experience this movie through the protagonist and the antagonist, and you're sort of nauseated. She's sort of a character that you love to hate, right? That's what you call contempt, when you look down on people. When you have a high position and you sort of abuse the people that are below you in a way. One of my favorite Disney characters is full of contempt. He's so full of contempt, it's almost entertaining. It is entertaining. It's Gaston from Beauty and the Beast, right? He is so prideful, he is so arrogant that he thinks Belle should do nothing but love him. And why wouldn't she? And so I've been wrestling really all week with this word contempt, because the psalm that we're going to look at is going to find the Israelites struggling with people treating them with this word contempt. It really is a simple word that just means disrespect. It means, I sort of just had only heard the word contempt in the courtroom, right? I'm about to hold you in contempt, which really just means you're disrespecting the court. Like you don't have enough reverence and respect for this court, and if you don't watch it, we're going to hold you in contempt, right? Well, the Israelites felt like their neighbors were bullies, arrogant, rude, proud, and we don't know who wrote Psalm 123, but they are feeling the weight of contempt by people that really don't have their best interest at heart. I was trying to think of a story of when I felt this. I was a college football coach, even though I'm only 5'10". I got to coach Division I and NFL football, but I'll never forget, this guy I don't think meant to treat me this way, but he did. He came into my office, and I was wearing kind of a preppy sweater, some khaki pants or something, and he looked at me and he goes, you're going to have a hard time earning college football players' respect with your preppy little sweaters and your lack of size. And I went, wow, thanks for being honest. And he said, I don't mean to be rude. You're just going to having not played at the highest level college football, you're going to have to work hard to earn these players' respect. And I remember being motivated by that. And then I went to the sports information director's office, and he wrote a little story for the media guide about me. And I told him all about my high school football days and my dad and playing for him. And when I couldn't wait to get my copy of the media guide to see what he wrote about me. This is a school I grew up loving, University of Texas. And then I read the bio, and he called me an undersized tight end. And I remember thinking, who told him I was undersized? How did he know that? But just a simple story of, there are far more serious ways that people have felt the weight of contempt, right? When you study the history of African Americans and slavery, boy, you read some of those African American spiritual songs, they are a people suffering, feeling disrespect. And they cry out to God in some of these beautiful songs that were written, feeling, gosh, the arrogant, the proud, those that are enslaving us, that is what you would call contempt. I thought about my Jewish friends this week when I was trying to figure out, gosh, how do I relate to this song? Having to wear a yellow badge that says Jew on it. That is a version of contempt. To put a badge on all Jewish people in Germany to identify you as a Jew would eventually be part of how they would identify who got carted away with the ultimate version of beyond contempt and disrespect, right? So history is full of references to people who have felt disrespected by people that have the high ground, right? And the Israelites, actually in Psalm 123, that is the place of the poet. He writes the song for the people of Israel, and they are weary from feeling contempt by people around them that are proud and arrogant and rude. As I started thinking about this, I feel like we're always supposed to not assume somebody else is the one. Like this psalm, when I first started trying to understand it, I started trying to think of all those people out there that show contempt. And then I felt like this gentle but firm poke. No, Anthony, you can be full of contempt. And if you're not careful, you can treat the 4 things you love the most, your 4 kids, with contempt. A version of having the high ground and disrespecting them. You can treat your wife with disrespect and contempt. If you're not careful to be humble and a servant and to build them up and encourage them, you have the high ground. You are a parent, and you have the ability to either bless them or encourage them or tear them down in an accidental. I would never do this on purpose. But boy, there were some pokes this week of the way I've spoken to my kids, the way I've corrected them, the way I've tried to parent them. It teeters on the line of disrespect, not respecting them as people. The way that God would approach me is the way I need to approach them. And so I've felt convicted. I never want to preach the word of God as though I'm the example. I try to be. But contempt is a subtle thing. It's a pride that can slip into your heart, especially when you have authority and a higher ground than somebody that you're called to lead. And so this morning, we're going to look at this poem. Again, we don't know exactly. It's not titled one that King David wrote. It's in the Psalms of Ascent. You can open there right now to Psalm 123. We're essentially going to look at how we respond to contempt, like if we are the person. that has been disrespected, either because of our gender, our race, our socioeconomic class, or if our parents or grandparents, whatever, if you've experienced any kind of contempt, or, this is challenging, or if you are the person and you feel a conviction this morning that you have held a place of authority and have treated somebody with contempt, this psalm would tell you what to do. Either way, there's always hope. Even if you're guilty of some sin that God lays on your heart, there's always a way to respond. And Psalm 23 is certainly a beautiful poem meant to encourage us in this. Let's read these words, and then I'll remind you why we titled the series Eyes Up. This is Psalm 123, just 4 verses. I lift up my eyes to you who sit enthroned in heaven. Verse 2, as the eyes of slaves look to the hand of their master, as the eyes of a female slave look to the hand of her mistress, so our eyes look to the Lord our God till he shows us his mercy. Have mercy on us, Lord. It says his name there, Yahweh. Have mercy on us, for we have endured no end of contempt. There it is. In other words, we're exhausted, no end. And then he repeats it. We've endured no end of ridicule from the arrogant, of contempt from the proud. And that's it. That's all this psalm says. So we're going to unpack these words because they are important. Just go back to the sermon series title, if you will. There you go, Eyes Up. Just want to remind you, if you haven't been here, that the Israelites, at the time of Christ, they would go up 3 times a year to these 3 feasts that everyone in Israel was invited to come up to Jerusalem. And Jerusalem sits at 2,500 feet. And the rest of Israel kind of lower than that. So you would ascend up the mountain, up to Mount Moriah, where Abraham was asked to sacrifice his son Isaac. This sacred place would become Jerusalem. That is the place where Jesus would ultimately be crucified. And 3 times a year, these pilgrims would journey, excited, at springtime, summertime, and in the fall for events like the Passover, where they would come and remember the holiest thing that had ever happened in Israel, God's deliverance from slavery. And they would come in the summer this time of year for the Feast of Pentecost. It was a gratitude offering. They would come foreshadowing what would happen in the fall when the harvest would come in. And then they would come to thank God at the Feast of Booths. It was a fall hike, and they would all gather. All of God's people would cram into Jerusalem to celebrate what God had done. And so the series is titled Eyes Up, and we have yet another reminder here in this psalm, I lift my eyes up. That's what the text has to say. I lift my eyes up. And so that's why we titled this series what it is. But these are more than poems. These are songs, actually. I started thinking about some songs that unify people. This week, I got to go see the one team we, carried with us from Houston. I'm not really a Rockets fan or a Texans fan. I do love the Houston Astros. And they were in town last week. So I got to take one of my sons to see the Rockies and the Astros, and I was reminded of how cool it is when everybody stands up in the 7th inning to sing a song, Take Me Out to the Ball Game, right? It's a unifying song. Whether you're going for the Astros or going for the Rockies, you sing this song. I went to the University of Texas often throughout the, sporting events. You lift up your Longhorns and you sing the Eyes of Texas. It's a unifying song. When I mention African Americans writing spiritual songs, the most famous of all, Swing Low, Sweet Chariot, right? Write this song with hope, with their eyes up to heaven, saying, surely God experiences our contempt, what we are experiencing. They would lift up their eyes and sing these unifying songs. Well, the Psalms of Ascent are just that. They are unifying songs that people would sing on these fall, summer, spring hikes. So that is what these are, and we're going through them one by one, just 4 verses here. So how should we respond when we experience contempt, or if this morning you're convicted that maybe you're guilty of contempt, of treating someone else without the respect that they deserve? The first point that I want to make is simply this. We are to lift up our eyes to the highest throne. lift up your eyes to the highest throne. That's right out of the text. I lift my eyes to you who sits enthroned in heaven. Now, I know that some of you stress out about politics. And I know that some of you hold the Republican Party in contempt. And I know that some of you hold the Democrat Party in contempt. That it's hard for you to not mock the president that doesn't share your values. Some of the best advice I can give you, no matter who you are on the spectrum, or maybe you're like me, you just pray for them all. And you don't really worry about it too much. I literally don't watch the news unless something comes to my attention, like what happened this week. But can I just give you some encouragement? If politics stress you out, there is a higher throne. And the Israelites are on a journey. And guess what? If you're an ancient Israelite, it's pretty hard to see Pontius Pilate abuse your people. It's pretty hard to watch King Herod sit on a throne. And so the Israelites would approach Jerusalem and they would appeal to a higher throne. See, they tried not to get discouraged by who sat on the earthly throne. And they said, I lift my eyes up. And they would sing as a community, a unifying song. I lift my eyes up to you who sit enthroned, not in Jerusalem, above Jerusalem, in the highest heaven. See, friends, that's where your hope is. It will never be in the White House. It will never be in a monarchy on earth, in any other country. The Christian's hope is in the highest heaven, where Jesus, we are told, sits at the right hand of the Father. And so when you get discouraged, when you feel, despair about anything going on in the world, can I remind you of Psalm 123? Lift up your eyes to the one who sits higher than the offices of the earth. Now sometimes, I don't know about you, sometimes I ask to speak to the manager. You ever done this? When you don't get the answer that you want? Can I speak to the manager? You know what one of the great privileges of being a Christian is? You can always ask to speak to the manager in heaven. Because earth is very flawed, right? And the people, the humans of earth, I believe most do their best, but they're not Jesus. And so in this psalm, what we see are the Israelites appealing to the manager, getting around the rulers of the earth and getting into heaven where Jesus sits and saying, that's where our help comes from. We want to go to him. I remember when Graham got hurt when he was like 5. He punched through some glass and he had a wound that I was just terrified. Put him on an ambulance, had to get him to Abilene, Texas. They put him to sleep, gave him a shot to relax him. And the people on the ambulance said, when he wakes up, make sure his dad's right next to him. Because we've seen the way this little boy looks at his dad. He's going to look for help from his dad. Now that's what every parent likes to experience. But now that he's 16 years old, my goal is no longer for him to look at me. I want him to look up. See, that's what the Israelites, all 4 of my kids, they've got to stop looking at me at some point and look at Jesus for their help. That's what this text is saying. Sometimes, and this is the role of every parent and grandparent, make sure you're pointing your kids' gaze at heaven, where Jesus is. Teach them to lift up their eyes to the manager of heaven, to the King, to the one who sits on a throne above all the thrones of earth. That is the goal of all of us. Now, why didn't Jesus get on his knees and beg Pontius Pilate for help? He could have, right? Oh, Pilate, I know this looks bad. I know they're mad at me, but please, Pilate. What did he say to him? Pilate's even amazed at him. I mean, don't you know I can help you? You might want to ask for help now. I mean, I can free you. You know I have authority. And Jesus calmly, not rude, not with contempt, not even arrogant, not proud, he looks at him and says, you really don't have the authority you think you do. So I'm not going to appeal to you. See, my eyes, my gaze is on my Father. He has authority above your authority. So I have nothing to say to you. So do your thing. And that should give us an example of what we're supposed to do. We don't look to the rulers of the earth for our help, friends. We put our gaze at the throne of heaven. And we see Jesus there. And we know that he's going to right all wrongs. He's coming again. Our eternity is set. And when we need help, gosh, the instincts of humans. We don't need to lawyer up all the time. Sometimes the things that we do to try to get leverage over each other. The Israelites were on a journey experiencing contempt, and they said, that's where our help comes from. Not even Jerusalem. Jerusalem is where we're going to celebrate where our help comes from, but our help comes up. That's why the sermon series is titled, Eyes Up. Now, I got a fly here. Point number 2 is simply, pithy prayers are no less powerful. Pithy meaning short. 4 verses. Sometimes I feel like we feel pressure to be long-winded with God so that he'll hear us. This is one of the short Psalms. You know how long it takes to say the Lord's Prayer? I timed myself this morning. 22 seconds. They can say it in football locker rooms before the game. 22 seconds. We don't need to be long-winded with God for him to hear us. This psalm is evidence that short prayers are good prayers. I had a friend this week that was down in the flooding, 18-year-old girl. The flood waters were rising. She called her daddy. Do you think she gave him a long-winded prayer to call for help? She said, Daddy, I can't get out of my car. He said, I'll be right there. I'll be right there. No long, hey, Dad, let me write a lengthy request for you to come help me, right? In this psalm, we see that you can be brief. You can be brief. God hears your prayer, even if it's brief and concise. Point number 3, relationships grounded in humility are built to last. There was a reference in this psalm to slavery, right? The slavery reference. As the eyes of slaves look to the hand of their master, as the eyes of female slaves look to the hand of her mistress, so our eyes look to the Lord our God till he shows us his mercy. Now, what that basically means, we don't live in a slavery context. There's nothing in that text glorifying slavery. It is a reference that sometimes there were really special relationships developed where someone helping in a household just loved their master to the degree that they didn't even need any communication to know how to take care of the person that they loved. That's what the commentators tell us is going on here. You know, I'm moved when I see like Saving Private Ryan or movies where the commanding officer uses like hand signals and the soldiers go take a mountain or they do what they're told based only on the hand signal of the commanding officer. It's a military thing, right? I was actually watching YouTube videos this week of the hand signals that they memorize so that they can obey the one that they love, right? Their commanding officer that they respect. That is the posture of the psalmist here. We love obeying God. And he reminds God, it is our privilege. We don't even need to see your hand, but when your hand comes up, boy, we want to jump to serve. It's just humility being discussed here. I had one of the greatest waitresses I've ever had this week at Graham's 16th birthday dinner. This young woman was from Hawaii, transferred to a restaurant here in Denver, and we didn't even need to tell her that we needed more water. Graham's steak wasn't cooked just how he liked it. She insisted on bringing him another one. And then he had mashed potatoes, but she brought him a baked potato, and he didn't even ask. They drew his name on the plate. They packed up the stuff that we wanted to take, and she was delightful. Her job was a joy. Nobody had to motivate her to do this. And we were kind of the last ones in the restaurant, and she didn't act like she was in a hurry at all. She acted like the privilege of her life was to serve us. It was moving. That's what's going on here. The psalmist says, Father in heaven, that's how we think about you. And it would be one thing if the person that you feel this way towards was prideful. But friends, let me remind you that it's humility in humility for Christians interacting with God. Did Jesus come prideful, lifting up his hand saying, come serve me? No. He came to put on his towel and to wash feet and to serve. And so what the psalmist is saying here is, it is our delight. You are our master and we love you, and it is our delight to serve you who has come to serve us, who has humbled himself. My friend John Bray died at 95 years old in Albany, Texas, and I will never forget what he said to me before he passed. He said, Anthony, listen, He said, I know I'm on my way to heaven. And if Jesus will just hand me a broom, I'll be so thankful. That's all I want. Just a broom. I don't need any recognition. I don't need my name called. If I can get in the back door and just sweep the floors at night, I will be happy for infinity. That's all I want, just a broom. I said, John, you're going to get more than a broom. This guy was humble. He loved Jesus. Friends, humility is what unlocks a prayer life. When you feel contempt towards someone else or you've experienced it, just remember, approaching God, the humble God that sent Jesus to Bethlehem, approaching him in humility is the way to really unlock the fullness of the relationship. And finally, 3 times in this text, point number 4 is simply this, and we'll transition to communion. The wisest request of all is one for mercy. 3 times. Have mercy. Oh God, have mercy. He repeats himself. Mercy is the theme of this poem. Have mercy on us, Lord. Have mercy on us. He repeats it. We're going to keep our eyes on you until you show us mercy. Now, this communion table is a table of mercy, friends. And we're going to now experience the Lord's Supper. But I was thinking, as I was sitting in my chair, of how to make sure that you have asked God. This is the ultimate thing to ask for from God, by the way. Mercy. Forgiveness. I'm so thankful that I was not raised by a man like Gaston. My dad was humble. And he would kneel beside our bed at night, and he would teach us about communion by saying, Tony, I remember him, I just can still hear his voice. Tony, we don't jack around during communion. Sit still. Talk to Jesus. Say thank you for the greatest gift you'll ever be given. What the psalmist cries out for here. See, the very definition of being a person of contempt, I have to tell you, is you're too proud to ask Jesus for mercy. It's the ultimate thing. See, the cross is not for people full of contempt, too proud to ask for it. The cross is the place where the broken and the humble and the grateful come to God saying, I'm so thankful that you have unlocked heaven for me through the cross, through what Jesus has done. And I opt in. I know I need mercy. So friends, as we prepare to experience the Lord's Supper together, let's remember what Jesus has done.